I'm good, David. Thanks. Wow, David. I heard or read about sounded like some pretty serious weather going on in Virginia. I don't know if you were affected by that. Well, that's good. That's super good. What are you working on, David? I bet you've got a project or two that you're working on. I'm curious what's in your what's on your music stand, or what's in your mind that you're working on. Oh, hey Rohan. David Oakes, it's humbling to hear that you're still working on Etude 7 and 8. I mean, I'm sure maybe working isn't the word. I'm sure you've done the work on them, but that you're still finding new stuff to explore in those pieces. It's pretty amazing. Hey Roberto, how you doing? And man, David, I'd love to know your if you feel like sharing. I'd love to know for people here who haven't looked into the George Van Epps harmonic mechanisms. It can be intimidating, right? It's 3 volumes, and they're all it seems like at least an inch thick. It's so much material. Do you start at the beginning and work your way through? Are those books built that way? Like, do you have to start at the beginning in order to understand the material? Or can you kind of just open to a page and play what's there? Um, my impression, I haven't done a lot of work in those books, but my impression is at the beginning, you would have to spend some time just understanding his notation system, if nothing else, and then also his explanation of, what the material is. But maybe for you, it's easier or not easier, but easy enough to just open to a page and work on something there. So I'm curious if you have kind of a field guide. Again, if you feel like sharing to how you navigate those harmonic mechanisms, volumes. Hey, David Deweese, I got your message, and I want to watch those videos, and maybe I can help you with gain staging. Um, maybe I can. I'm not an expert on programming, as you know, but I'm glad to give a listen and see if I can help you with those. David, did you get to work one-on-one with Van Epps? I know, of course, that you spent a lot of time up close with Jimmy Weibel, but I guess I never asked you. Did you study with Van Epps or get to spend much time up close with him? Uh, Such an interesting thinker. His approach to the guitar. Uh, so singular, interesting organizational stuff. Hi, Florian. Also, if anyone else has questions or comments or anything, I'm glad that folks are just tuning in. I don't have a subject or an agenda. I just realized I haven't done one of these office hours sessions in a while. And the next few weeks, I'm going to be traveling a lot, so I won't be able to do one most likely until August. So I thought I would just hop on and see how everyone's doing, see if I could answer any questions or anything like that. So I'm having a nice talk with David Oakes, who, for those of you who don't know, is a fantastic musician and educator, and um, has lots and lots of resources on his website. Um, so not just a great player, but a very generous sharer of the musical of a lot of really deep musical knowledge. Um, so do check out his website. For those of you wondering who's this guy David that I'm chatting with, um, he's a remarkable figure in the guitar community. That's who he is. David says, I spent some time going to his gigs and listening to him when he played live in LA and Orange County, but never studied with him. Yeah, I wasn't even sure, to be honest, how much, one-on-one teaching he did. So I was curious to ask you what your experience was with him. Uh, yeah, I think I saw him play. I think I saw him play a duo show in Berkeley with Howard Alden in the early 90s when they were doing some stuff together. That might have been the only time I saw him in person. Yeah. He played with Tony Rizzi a lot in the 80s in LA. Gosh, I'm sorry I missed that. I look back on, growing up in LA. Of course, I didn't even turn 21. I turned 21 in 1987. So I guess before that, I couldn't get into bars so much. But certainly, you could see people playing in non-age restricted places. Um, didn't Ted play at like a fish restaurant or something like that in the Valley? I seem to remember. And then saying fish reminds me that there was that place, Something's Fishy, which I think was a restaurant that had quite a bit of music. So anyway, I don't want to use my age as an excuse of why I didn't go out more. But man, I wish if I could go back in time, I would have caught a lot more shows. I went to all ages things when I could. Um, I used to see shows sometimes at the country club in Reseda, Wolf and Rissmiller's Country Club. But I didn't go to like a lot of John Pisano guitar nights, um, or I only went to Dante's maybe a couple of times. There's just so much amazing music happening, and I mostly was still just like listening to records and taking in music that way. I don't think I had fully embraced uh, how important going to see live music is to growth and inspiration, and especially at that time in Los Angeles, you could hear just about anybody play. Uh, I did go to some bigger, shows like concerts at the Hollywood Bowl or the Forum. things like that, the Coliseum. But like club shows, not as much. Um, anyway, yeah, and didn't Jimmy Weibel used to play with what was that place on the west side called the Comeback Inn? Didn't he play there sometimes? Who's the other guitar player's name? I'm totally blanking on. Um, whose son is also an incredible guitar player and teaches out at Cal Arts. Oh man, uh, David will help me here. I hope. uh, yeah, but yeah, LA in the '80s, you could hear just about anybody, all of the heaviest guitar players, all of the guys that I was reading about in Guitar Player magazine and going out and buying their records if I could. You could see them in small clubs. What a cool thing! Yeah, Larry Kuntz, right? So didn't Jimmy sometimes play with Dave Kuntz at that place, the Comeback Inn in Venice or Culver City, somewhere out on the west side? Hmm. Wow. I'm going to read this because this looks like an interesting comment. Sir, can you speak more about the forward motion in classical music? I can relate bop and swing music, etc. Um, oh, David says that was before my time. um, Wait, David, were you not like in LA forever and ever? I guess not. Because like I became aware of Jimmy Weibel probably in 1978 or something like that through my grandfather. Uh, and that was around the time that he put out his Etudes record and that first edition of the Art of Two Line Improvisation, and so that was kind of my intro. Oh, okay, wow, right. All right, so let me see if I can address Rohan Sen Music's question. Can you speak more about the forward motion in classical music? Um, uh, I I don't know if I can. I'm going to. I'm not sure I'm qualified to. Um, I'm not a serious student of classical music, but uh, forward motion. When I think of forward motion in music, classical and other kinds of music too, I think of writing using certain kinds of forms in writing, in composing, so that when we watch composers in movies, or if you've tried to compose yourself, you do it one measure of music at a time. You start with a blank page and you write a measure or two or three, and so it may not feel like it has a lot of forward motion because you're starting at the beginning and just kind of go moving forward into this vast expanse of unwritten music. But if you're a more seasoned composer, you're thinking not measure by measure, but you're thinking in longer phrases. So a musical idea probably occurs to you that's 8 measures long or 16 measures long. And so you're not kind of behind each note, leaning into it with your shoulder, trying to move it forward. But if anything, you may conceive of the whole phrase all at once, which again might be 8 measures or 16 measures or something longer. Um, or you just may have a sense of where you want it to land. You might know that it's going to be 16 measures and you want to get from this idea or this harmony, the one chord, say, and ending over here on uh, uh, possibly a resolution or something that's, if you want it to feel like you've closed the phrase, then a resolution, or something that doesn't quite resolve, that seems to need more, uh, seems to need more more steady. So you'll end a phrase, and then maybe you'll write the next phrase is something kind of similar, but develops the idea. Um, there are kinds of chord progressions that seem to move forward, and there are kinds of chord progressions that seem to be more static. Um, there are kinds of chord progressions that seem to be cyclical. Let me see if I can illustrate those. So, like something that would be more in a cycle that could go on for some time would be if you just did this circle of fourths diatonically, and this would be the chord movement. I'm not doing anything particularly melodic here. So the chords I'm doing in the key of C are C, F, B diminished, E minor, A minor, D minor, G, back to C. And you could do that as many times as you want. To me, it has a kind of a forward momentum. The cycle kind of calls for it to keep moving forward. And yet, every time you get to see it, it feels like it could be the end, but it could also be continued. So that's a kind of a loop of, it's not quite the same as forward motion, but it does have a sense of kind of moving in a circle like that. You could also just have something that doesn't go anywhere. I'm just going back and forth from 1 to 4, back. And then if we finally go to the 5, that does seem to want to go back to 1. So there's a bit of forward motion there. Anytime you stay away from the 5 for a while and then play it, it's almost like the 5 pushes you to want to go back to the 1. So that's one of the levers you can pull. We could just kind of swim around in the key of C and play through other chords. But when we finally go to the 5, which is G or G7, that to me signals that we're going home. It's like you've put your turn signal on so that the people behind you know that you're going to make that turn. So those are kind of like harmonic forward motion. There's melodic forward motion. Um, Gosh, I don't know. Like I said at the top of this, I'm maybe not the most qualified person to talk about classical music. I'm not a student of classical music, but I listen to it. Um, if you have done some transcribing in and have confidence in your ears to listen to records and transcribe what's happening, then I would say do some studying and try to see, like, just listen to some classical music and try to figure out what it is that's pushing the music forward. Is it the melody? Is it the bass line? Is it the chords, which is kind of the either the sum of the melody and the bass line, or could be some internal movement? Um, Dynamics can also be a thing that move music forward or slow it down. There's so much. It'd be great to listen to music, and if you can find, uh, if you don't want to transcribe or just can't, um, I mean, if you just don't have that skill developed yet, you could always see if you can find the score at the library or online and maybe study it. Um, there's lots of ways to move music forward. The thing that I would want to make sure that you don't overlook is form. You know, how many measures is the piece of music? And within that, what repeats? Um, like, is the form A, B, C, D, or is it A, B, B, or A, B, A, B, C, A, B, or whatever it is? Because repetition is also, one of the things that can help music either move forward or not feel like it's moving forward. Time is a funny thing. We all are aware of time because most of us wear a watch. I'm not wearing one right now, but I usually do. We have our cell phones that tell us the time. So we're aware of real, kind of empirical time, but musical time works a little differently. And great composers are really masters of time. If you listen to a piece of music and it really captivates you, it's hard to say if it's 2 minutes long or 8 minutes long or 17 minutes long. Um, and that again just has to do with being a kind of a master of the elements of forward motion and not forward motion and repetition and loops and shape. So study all of that stuff and see what you can discover on your own. Maybe start a little notebook where you write down the things that you discover. Russ says, I've got kind of an odd question that really isn't about guitar tips, but I've been curious. Here it comes. Your electric gigs are consistently in venues where you use small tube combos, etc. Has there ever been a fly or other date where you show up and the backline is something like a Marshall or some other big honkin' rock amp? If so, has how has that worked out for you? Thanks, man. Russ, that's a good question. Um, yeah, that's a really cool question. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I showed up on a gig and there was a Marshall amp, but it has happened. It certainly happens in rehearsal spaces sometimes. Sometimes you rent a rehearsal room, uh, and you get there, and the amps are these big amps like Marshalls or even a Fender Twin Reverb is way too much power for what I'm interested in doing. So the flavor is different than a Marshall, say, but the wattage wise, it's kind of the same problem. I don't like it. I don't like loud amps because I don't like to play loud. And if you take a loud amp and turn the volume down, they generally don't sound very good. Most amps want to be more wide open. Uh, you know, so that's why a small amp is nice because you can open it up, meaning turn the volume up, turn the tones up, and it still sounds really good. Usually, I have on my pedal board a very mild overdrive pedal. And if I'm using a small amp this is on a fly gig where if you're not sure what a fly gig means, it means like you're not on tour bringing your own equipment everywhere, but you're just getting on a plane with your guitar and your pedal board and you're flying to the gig and you're using the amps that are there, guitar amps, bass amps, the drums, everything is provided and you travel with the minimum stuff. So I would just travel with a guitar and a pedal board. So I've got an overdrive on my pedal board that if I'm using a small amp, I will use that overdrive when I need it, when I want to have an overdriven sound or especially when I want to take a solo. And otherwise, I can get a little bit of that breakup from the amp. So I don't need to use the pedal as much. I just get the amp to do that for me. And the pedal, my overdrive pedal becomes more like a boost that I just step on when it's time to take a solo, when I need that extra gain and sustain. If I'm using an amp that's big and clean, like a twin reverb, say, or a Roland Jazz Chorus 120, JC 120, then I might use that overdrive and just leave it on all the time and roll the volume down on my guitar. So I'm kind of getting the overdrive box to do what I would wish that the amp was doing, which is to break up a little bit. So then in that case, I'm using a little more gain and a little more volume on the overdrive and turning it down on my guitar. And then when it's time to take a solo, I'll open up the volume knob more. I'll switch to the bridge pickup usually. And so it changes the way that I use my overdrive pedal depending on if I have a small amp or a big amp. I also have now a boost pedal it's a Benson amps germanium boost, and I can use that as part of the equation as well. Like if I've got a small amp and it's breaking up naturally, I might step on that when I want to take a solo. So it just hits the amp a little harder rather than needing it to just like make the overdrive box louder. I'm using the boost not in terms of making the overdrive sound louder, but to just hit the front end of my amplifier a little harder. And that gives me not only more volume, but more breakup and more compression if it's a tube amp. Yeah, I don't really love Marshall amps, but it's because I don't play that loud. And so I've never really had the opportunity to open one up. I have for years played a 1962 Fender Deluxe amp. That's with the light brown Tolex. And people who like Marshall amps tell me that that amp is kind of like a miniature, a Marshall in miniature. So if that's true, if that's what a Marshall does, like something like that, but just with, 412s and a lot more wattage, then I think I would like it. But it's just too much firepower for me. Anticipation maybe by the listener. Yeah, exactly. Anticipation by the listener. David Oakes says harmonize a major scale with 1 and 5 chords. So I think that's David's answer to musical forward motion. So you could try that. So here's a major scale. That's G major scale. So we could try to harmonize that with just 1 and 5. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, geez, that's a great exercise. I don't know if you caught that, but just take a major scale and harmonize it using just 1 and 5. The first thing I did is I went up a G scale starting on G, and I put a chord under each note. So for the note G, I harmonized it with a G triad. harmonize the A note with a D7 triad or a D7. This is really a diminished triad, but implying D7. So G, D7, G. So I'm harmonizing the B with a G, harmonize the C with a D7, harmonize the D with G, and then the E could be D7 with a 9, or you could say it's still a G with the E in the melody. So you could harmonize the so that's D in the melody, that's a G chord, and then E, you could stay on the G chord, and on the F sharp, that's D7. So that's one thing. You could also have 2 melody notes per chord. So it could be G, A, and then B for your D chord. G, D7, G, D7, G with the 6 on top. Yeah, lots of possibilities. It could go up, down. You could write different kinds of melodies. David, that's a cool exercise. Thank you. Russ, I hope that answers your question. Gosh, any other questions? Any other questions? Well, gosh, if there's no more questions, I'll sign off. I really appreciate you all tuning in, and thanks to David Oakes for uh, asking cool questions, and also offering an exercise and some insight into George Van Epps. And I'm going to put a link here to David's website if anybody wants to check it out. Um, a lot of good stuff here. This is David Oak's website. Hey, Jill. Oh man, you're tuning in, and I'm about to tune out. So, thanks to everybody for being here. I'll do another one of these again, probably in early August. If you want to know where I'm playing, you can go to adamlevy.com. If you want to learn some stuff, you can go to guitartipspro.com. That's my Patreon site. And you can also just turn off your computer, stop going to websites, and just pick up your guitar and play. That'd be a wonderful idea. All right, take care, everybody.